Hello, this is Amanda with Sublime Pottery. So the last video I did, I shared my favorite dual-handed journaling activity that I use a lot to help me get centered. And I have decided, since I am such a huge advocate of sharing self-care and helping people connect with their creativity, that I want to marry these two and do a video series in my journal to help you connect with your creativity, or find that this might be a really helpful self-care practice for you. So a little backstory that relates to the activity that I'm going to share is about 10 years ago, when I was going through my Creative Journal Expressive Arts training. I got this big burst of creativity and ended up starting what was to become my very first art series, going into my very first art show. And what I did, since I was going through this training, I started incorporating some of the tools that I was learning. And so underneath the layers of painting, I wrote out with my non-dominant hand my secret wish. And you could still see fragments of words peeking through. But the really funny thing is that my first date with the man that is now my husband was at the venue where my art show was currently hanging. And it took me a while to realize, because I didn't think on this first date that he was going to be my husband, but how powerful this tool possibly could be. So I've used it frequently over the years, and it's yielded some really amazing results in bringing experiences that are my authentic heart's desire, what I want to experience. And on a more tangible side, what this activity is doing is it is preparing your space. Every artist, before they start doing, their art, ideally prepares their space. And as I prepare my space, I'm setting the intention of what it is that I'm wanting to do. So when I'm making art, I'm setting the intention that I make something beautiful that moves somebody. And so this is the same idea, is you are preparing your space to start giving shape and texture to your heart's desire, whatever it is. It could be that you want to connect with love, or connect with your creativity, or who knows? So anyway, we're going to be using supplies that are really easy to find. You can find at any dollar store that I've been to. They've got a really basic craft section. And so if you've got more art supplies, you can get more involved with it. But this video is really intended for people that may not have much experience with creativity in this way. And I'm providing a non-threatening beginning point for getting familiar with what art and creativity is. So let's get started. Okay, what you will need is a craft brush and at least one bottle of paint, but more is definitely better for this project. So pick, 3 or 4 colors that you like, and a pencil. So before we get into the project, I'm just going to show you some of the other pages that I've done using the activity that I am about to share. And I probably got about 10 bottles of paint, and I just experiment with laying over different colors and smearing it in different ways. Okay, so let's get painting. I like to put clips on my journal when I'm doing the dual-handed warm-up activity, but in my journals, the pages lay really flat after you start working on them, so I don't need them anymore. And I'll post a link in the description of the dual-handed activity, which is a great starting off point. An interesting thing that happens when using paint over markers is the markers like to mix in with the paint and they bleed through, as you will start noticing as I'm beginning to blend the paint in. And when doing this process, getting as many of your senses involved definitely enhances this process, like how the brush sounds as it's mixing the paint around and how it feels. And now that the marker is beginning to bleed through, I just keep going over it until the paint gets tacky. So you can stop here and have a perfectly good surface to do your journaling on, but I like to play a little bit more than that. So just squirting a little bit more paint out and mixing it into the tacky white paint. And now for my favorite part, pressing the pages together. And I'm going to let this dry. Okay, time to start journaling. So this is a non-dominant hand journaling activity. You can try it both ways as you are writing out your secret wish of what you are wanting to connect to or experience. But I have found that journaling with your non-dominant hand, or my non-dominant hand, gives me access to a different part of my brain that is more closely connected with my authentic heart's desire, as opposed to journaling with my dominant hand, which just rehashes what my thinking brain thinks that I want. I will post journal prompts in the description for this activity, but this is where you are connecting with your heart's desire of what your secret wish is. And so, like I talked about earlier in the video, when I would write with my non-dominant hand my secret wish underneath my paintings, and then I would cover them up. It took me a while to realize why I was doing that, and I think it is to really embed this desire into my creation, into the creative process, which is symbolized by me writing in the journal and painting over it. I'm embedding it into my creation And I'm just letting my intuition choose the colors and where it wants to go. And I'm not being too critical. Actually, I'm not being critical at all about how I'm smearing the paint. I'm just wanting to, cover the page. And I'm playing with the blending. And bubble wrap, that's become one of my favorite texture tools. And check this out. So now I've got my surface for the next part of the process, which I will share in the next creative video. But I want to make sure that some of the words are peeking through. And if I want to remember what I wrote, I sometimes take a photograph of it on my phone so I can look back upon it later. I'm pulling the pages apart from the page behind and the page in front to make sure that when the paint dries, it doesn't stick to the other pages. I really hope that you enjoy this process. Even without the journaling, doing this type of painting is a great way to connect with your creative self. And I find that most helpful when I'm doing my inner work. It's a good foundation for engaging this part of my brain, the creative part of my brain, when I'm trying to process emotions or find creative solutions to problems, or to just relax. And stay tuned for the next video in this series where we give shape and texture to the part of ourself that is going to bring this secret wish to life. Have a sublime day.